Alright, here's Quill. Interesting accessory. It almost looks like a wrench or something instead of a gun, but can't get it off this blister without it flying in the air. Okay, I'm gonna have to turn the camera off and put my glasses on and find where that thing just flew. Give me a moment. And about 10 minutes later, we found the dang thing. Zach very kindly came in and helped me search for it. He was with a flashlight crawling around under the table looking for it. I was going around the table looking in every, possible nook and cranny.
I once had a granny who searched every nook and cranny.
Still couldn't spot the thing. I reviewed the footage to see if I could see which direction it flew, maybe. That would give us a hint, at least, where to refine our search. It went through that archway, over the baby gate, which is technically the puppy gate, and landed on the carpet in the next room. So yeah, pretty good distance on it. I'd say about 5-6 feet that it flew when it popped out of that blister. Okay, so unexpected, but here we go. Here's Quill, which, I mean, they could have sculpted him to look exactly like the character on the show, but I really liked the fact that they evoked the vintage Ugnaught sculpt so much. Maybe not a perfect match, but clearly, there's some DNA happening there. Now, I said that these are the first retro style, vintage style figures that I've opened, but I forgot. Actually, back when we had a big snowfall, I wanted to open my Luke Snowspeeder from the Hoth board game that they did. Why do they keep putting these figures with board games? Because I had to buy 2 of that one because I wanted one to be Luke and one to be Dak. But clearly, another figure that's based on a vintage mold, the Luke X-Wing mold, and since I'd already opened those to take photos of them in the snow, I went ahead and opened Tarkin, who, again, based on a vintage mold of the Imperial Commander. So now you've got Mando and Boba, you've got Quill and an Ugnaught. I guess I should hold them so I'm not blocking their heads from view there. So, and obviously IG-11 here is going to look very similar and feel very similar to the classic IG-88. And I do have a silver and a gray version of that guy. So, alright. Let's see if I can open this one without losing any of the parts. I've said a couple of times that I really got the feeling as I was watching The Mandalorian that they were just making up the scripts based on playing with Kenner toys. And here's a remote control Jawa Sandcrawler. What would happen if Boba Fett was, fighting some Jawas? And they write an episode, And what if Boba Fett flew up and hit the release on the solar panel of a TIE fighter? And that's an episode, And then for it to come full circle, for the actual episodes to make me think so strongly of vintage toys, and then for them to actually make vintage style toys from that show, I was like, that's a must. I've got to pick these up. So anyway, yep. Torso's a little sturdier than the classic IG-88, but very similar. You can feel there. Alright. And his weapons look virtually identical to the weapons that came with IG-88, except now they're in black instead of in the Empire Strikes Back blue color. So put those in there as well. Alright. By the way, if you haven't seen Free Guy, just random association happening in my brain here. If you have not seen Free Guy, check it out, because the voice of IG-11 is the bad guy in Free Guy, and does a really, if you watch the bonus features as well, does a really interesting job with it. So that's all the figures that are based on vintage sculpts. I mean, maybe Moff Gideon here might have a little bit of DNA from, say, AT-AT Commander. But let's go ahead and open the rest of these folks, and then we'll get to probably the smallest Star Wars figure they've ever done. So let's do Cara Dune next. Hi, Cara. How you doing? I already used that joke, but it's a Shemp Howard joke from a specific episode of The Three Stooges. Right before the pandemic, I got to moderate a panel at a local con. What was it called, Zach?
It was Confusion.
Confusion. And I got to moderate a panel at this local thing called Confusion. And I did several. I did Butch Patrick. I did Curtis Armstrong. Alison Arngrim was my favorite. Which one?
Marsden.
Well, yeah, we got to meet Jason Marsden. You're right. But I didn't moderate his panels. We just got to talk to him afterwards. And then the only one that I did on both days was John Kassir, who you would know as the voice of the Crypt Keeper. But I remembered him from a biopic done on TV about the life of the Three Stooges. And he played Shemp. And so I brought it up on the Saturday panel, and I was really surprised by the depth of his answer and how much of Shemp's life he had studied, and how many of Shemp Howard's idiosyncrasies he knew, and his fears and his phobias and everything. And I was like, wow, you know, he really prepped for this role. And then on the Sunday panel, I asked John Kassir that morning, I said, so what do you want to talk about today? And he said, I think what we did yesterday was fine. Like, oh, okay, cool. So I go into it with the same question cards, prepared for him to make the same answers, and he, you know, he would paraphrase, and then he would explore an anecdote he didn't do the day before. Didn't have to do that. It was kind of just like for me and maybe some of the con staff to hear new versions of the same tales, but it was pretty cool. He even pulled up on his phone a photo of the 4 actors from that, including Michael Chiklis that played Curly Howard. And their producer for that movie was Mel Gibson. So he pulls up this great photo of the 4 of them, and they shot it in Australia, I think, you know, surrounding the producer, and not a big convention we're talking about here. So he's showing it to me, and then he goes, I'll just show it to everybody. And he walks out in the audience and is holding his phone up and letting people look at his personal phone to study the photo. And if it timed out, he would pull it back up for them. And I was just like, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to stay here at the dais. And so I just would keep asking him questions, and he would still, you know, he'd lean over and answer me, and he's still showing the phone to people, and he'd step to the next person, let them look at the photo on his phone for as long as they wanted to. So anyway, pretty cool guy. I really enjoyed talking with him. He and Alison Arngrim probably my 2 favorites from that weekend. So, and I had a deathly phobia of Nellie Olson when I was a kid. My sisters would watch that show, Little House on the Prairie, and I was just like, oh man, guys, come on. I did not pick these celebrities. They were assigned to me. And so then I kind of did a little prep on everybody. And on Alison Arngrim, I was like, oh, okay. And she was nothing like the character of Nellie Olson. Could not see any resemblance between the 2 of them until she was telling this one story. And we're on these little, like, you know, bar stools, kind of like a few feet apart. This is pre-pandemic, like I say. And I'm on the left, and she's telling a story about her husband, and they would, see an episode of Little House on the Prairie come on the TV, and her husband would say, "Oh, I've seen that face before," and she looked away from me, and she turned on Nellie Olson, and she came back around 180 degrees and hit me full in the face with Nellie Olson face, and I involuntarily took a half step away from her and like put the bar stool between me and her. I mean, it was terrifying. And then at the end of the panel, she reached up to hug me, and I was like, I mean, it was night and day, the difference between Alison Arngrim and Nellie Olson. So, all right, we've got Grief Karga opened, we've got Cara Dune opened, Moff Gideon with his lovely Darksaber accessory. So now they've done that particular accessory in the yellow color for Bespin Luke, blue color for Luke Jedi, blue color for that Luke Snowspeeder outfit. It was a little rare to see the blue one for the Luke Jedi. It was more common for his to be green, which is accurate to the film, but they did package a few with a blue one. And I don't think they ever did a red. I know there's a custom red one that I have now. And now they've done it in this translucent gray color for the Darksaber for Moff Gideon. So that's pretty cool. I remember back in the day, hey, run grab me that flashlight. I remember back in the day, Craig, my neighbor, and I discovered that some of the weapons, especially the blue ones for The Empire Strikes Back, were translucent. And Craig would sometimes call translucent, this is my son Zach, by the way. So Craig would sometimes call translucent invisible. Because I remember one time he said, "I watched this documentary on polar bears. Did you know that their fur is invisible?" And I'm like, "I don't think that's right." He said, "No, it just looks like it's white, but it's actually invisible." And I'm picturing this like, bare naked bear crawling around on the ice floes and everything. And what he meant was that the fur was translucent, but the word he could remember was invisible. So, all right, Moff Gideon. I don't think he shares any parts with the AT-AT driver, or if he does, they added a whole lot more details to it. So, the reason I wanted the flashlight is maybe you can see the translucent nature of that Darksaber blade there, which is ironic because this one glows when backlit more than any other vintage weapon ever did, and yet it's supposed to be the opposite. It's supposed to be, a holdout area and just nothing but black in there, but pretty cool. I wish they had done translucent weapons for more of the vintage figures there. So, and he has a blaster as well. So, all right, I'm gonna put
the ending scene.
Yeah. Well, of this
no
was
spoilers, of course.
Right. No spoilers. No spoilers. From the end of season 1, I guess. So, all right. Where's an opaque lightsaber? I've got one in this Luke. Hand me that flashlight back one more time. So yeah, just for comparison, when backlit, well, I don't know. On camera, I'm having a hard time telling them apart. So it's not translucent to my naked eye, but the camera is showing it glowing slightly in this light. So I think that's just more of a specular highlight than anything else. Specular highlight is a reference to a Star Wars documentary with I can't think of his name. One of the special effects guys.
Right, well that kind of reads as a specular highlight now.
Is that supposed to be Mando? Or
Yeah, that's Mando.
Boba.
This is Boba, and that's Mando. So
It looks weird with the cape.
yeah,
What is that
for
version of cape?
for the Wave 2, for the Season 2 figures, he's going to have his Beskar plates, and he's going to have a cloth cape. Which, I don't know, I kind of like the vibe of the vinyl, but I do also like the feeling of the cloth capes, because if Mando is set post Return of the Jedi, by Return of the Jedi, the figures had cloth capes. You got characters
Might as
like...
well go with the theme, I guess.
Yeah, you got figures like Luke Jedi, you got figures like, well, Yoda had a cloth cape in the Empire Strikes Back line. Jawa had a cloth cape in the Star Wars line. So at first it was just like, oh, these little tiny figures, we're going to give them a cloth cape so they have more perceived value and people don't feel like they're being cheated. But then by Jedi, they're like, well, okay, Squidhead's going to have 2 cloth capes, a cloth cape and a cloth cloak and a cloth skirt. Luke Jedi occasionally had a clasp on the hood of his cape. So here's his hover pram, which always makes me think of an episode of Whose Line Is It Anyway, where Ryan Stiles did not know what pram meant, and I can't think of her last name, but the comedian's name was Josie, and she's like, perambulator. So she defined what Brits call a baby carriage for him. So, all right, let's put this thing together first. I really wish that piece was clear instead of opaque. So there is his pram, and somehow or another it's got to open, or that's just removable, I guess. So, all right.
Probably for when he's trying to protect himself.
All right.
And then when he's feel like he's safe.
I love the way his mind works. He was very small. We went to see Wall-E. And I thought, I don't know, there's no dialogue in this movie. And he leans over to me. Oh, God, you've brought him here on camera. He leans over to me and he goes, he's sad because all the other Wallies are dead. And I'm like, oh, he gets it. Even without dialogue, he gets it. That is the teensiest, tiniest Star Wars figure I've ever seen in my life. Our Strikes Back case. I mean, Yoda, we used to say, was the smallest figure. Let's get the real Yoda out, and then we'll compare him to Baby Yoda. Size-wise. Alright, so there's full-grown, 900-year-old Yoda. And there's Baby Yoda. I mean, he's like half the height. Wow. That is impressive. He only has 3 points of articulation, so head, shoulders, but I mean to maintain the vintage style, they would be hard pressed to put any additional articulation on there. And he comes with a little teeny tiny frog, which I want to go find my Jabba's dais and put that right in the bowl right now. So yeah, I always bothered me there was no frog inside Jabba's bowl underneath his hookah. Alright, so there are the 7 figures from The Mandalorian Season 1. 3 of them sporting vinyl capes, which all seem to be, well, those 2 are black and that one's a very dark brown, I think. Wouldn't you say, Zach?
Yeah.
I'm colorblind, so I almost invariably have to have people judge colors for me. Matter of fact, I think I mentioned that in the article about customizing action figures, because I had done a Darth Vader one time with a freeze frame of the movie. It was the unmasked Darth Vader with the bald head and everything. Consulting a freeze frame of the movie, and I was like, what do you think? And I think it was my first wife. She's like, it looks really good. Why'd you make him blue, though? It's like, because that's what color he is on the screen, you know. But I had mixed in, you know, some flesh tone and some gray and some blue and some white until I got it to what I thought looked just like the flesh tone on the screen. And he was blue. All right,
You basically made him into Yondo.
Yeah, from
Yondu.
From Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep.
All right.
Or a Trandoshan. Or no, Geonosh? Rodian.
Oh,
I was trying to think of Greedo.
yeah, Greedo's a Rodian. Very good.
He's the same color.
The funny thing is, I have not pressed Star Wars on my kids at all, so this is everything he's picked up from video games and Clone... You were watching Clone Wars earlier, weren't you? No, you were watching Rebels.
Yeah.
So, alright, so I'm running out of places to put these guys to try to put them all on camera at the same time. Lend a hand here. Hold up this one and this one. And then, so there we go. Remnant Stormtrooper makes 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 figures from the initial line of The Mandalorian, all on camera at the same time.
Kind of
take
like a curtain call, honestly.
and take a bow.